we are live.
So I'm on it and it says recording.
Oh,
You're not
hello. Where's
there.
the right link?
So Christine's in the same link. Are we in my old link rather than
Yeah.
yours? Is that what we're sorry. Hi Christine. I'm just talking to trying to figure things out. I'll pop you on mute, but I can't figure out why. I'll show you my face. Hi. So we can't figure out why it's not streaming into the Facebook page like it usually does. So yes, I'm on the phone with Bon. I'll just see if we can figure it out. If not, we'll stick with this for tonight. But you and I have the same link, so there's something going, all right? Thank you so much.
Okay. I am.
Hello. Oh, bless. I think we're just going to stick with this. And if you're comfortable, I'm just going to record it and put it on a closed YouTube account, and we'll just share it onto the Facebook that way. But it'll just be for the bond group. So,
Right, okay.
are you
Yeah.
comfortable with that?
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Christine. Nice to meet you, by the way. I'm Megan.
Hi.
Yeah, I do the Wednesdays, and I think don't know where you're at in the program, but I've done module 3. So you'll see my face come up in module 3 of Bond's program as well.
I'm just starting week 9 today, so I don't quite know when module 3 starts, but I think it's fairly soon.
Nice one. Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, yes, thank you. Are you UK based?
Yes, yes, I'm in the Midlands. I'm in near Stoke-on-Trent, yeah.
Oh, lovely. Did you get the snow?
Yes. We've still got some out there, mostly melted now.
That sounds
But
amazing. The
yeah.
Canadian in me wished we had it. I'm in Essex. Um,
Uh,
But I'm Canadian. Yeah, I've just lived here 18 years and married an Essex boy, I suppose.
all right.
Yeah.
I have watched one or two of your sessions before.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
so
A
pleased.
while ago you said about journaling and I'm doing that regularly.
Oh, I'm so pleased.
Just
Well,
briefly.
oh, great. Well, I have one tonight that has a few journal prompts in it. So yeah, I'll take you through that. I personally find I come and go with journaling, but I do find it helps, doesn't it? It's such a nice way to kind of like release. And I feel like it just gets it out of your head and gives you that
Yeah.
opportunity to I
Yeah.
sometimes feel like it's like a deep breath. Sounds weird, but it's like out somewhere on the page.
I'm really glad you said about just do a mind map or just do 5 minutes because that's often what I do.
Oh.
I'll just literally do 5 minutes and just get a few bits down.
Do you know what? When I'm out of practice as well, sometimes I just write like 3 things I'm grateful for, and it just becomes enough. So that's
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah. If you ever don't feel like doing it, or sometimes I write 3 negative things and 3 positives, I just flip it. But that's a nice way in as well. Cool. Well, I've got a different topic tonight, but there is a little layer of journaling if you want. So I'll crack on in a second. But if you have any questions, just let me know or drop it in the chat, and then I can kind of stop. Or it's just the two of us as well, so I don't mind. And I know lots of people will watch it on repeat. But I always come from like a well-being point of view, looking a little bit at different theories and how we can kind of relate it to to our personal experiences, building our confidence and our resilience, and just this kind of journey that we're on to healing. And I found this theory. It started with a quote that I've delved like quite deeply into, and it was about the three faces of the self. And I don't know if you've ever come across that. It's rooted in like Japanese theory, but they suggest that we as humans all have three faces. And so tonight we're going to look at how those three faces maybe could help us look at who we are right now, maybe how we present to others, and just kind of take us on a little reflection of kind of who we are, what different versions of us exist, and maybe how we can kind of reflect a little bit on one of the faces, is this face that we never show anyone. So the three faces, one is the face we show the world, and I'll go into that in detail. The other one is the face we show just our close friends, and family, those people that we really trust. And then the third one is that there's a face that we don't ever show anybody. And sometimes that is where we kind of let some of our worries or our trauma kind of sit. And it's just really interesting to reflect on how all three faces are like poignant and part of us and part of this like multifaceted of being human. But how can we, with this self-awareness, kind of move through our kind of worry and trauma and fears and anxieties? And yeah, so that's what we're going to look at a little bit in the session. I thought I would just kind of start with it's fits in this realm of Japanese philosophy, and it's also part of their cultural understanding. So I think it's quite interesting just as a culture. There's this like profound concept that delves into these intricate layers of like our human existence. And again, it's kind of deemed the three faces of self. And the concept reflects kind of this multifaceted nature of like a human. And we unveil these different masks that we wear, and the different personas we project to the world. And I remember being like asked once quite a deep question in a retreat, and somebody just kind of said, like, who are you? And then they asked me to meditate, just saying, like, who am I? Who am I? And that sounds like quite a deep question. And I actually thought, well, who am I in what way? And I remember sat there thinking in this deep thought by myself, like, well, I'm this with my children, and I'm like this in my job, and I'm like this with my best mate, and I'm like this. So it isn't, it's not something that we don't know innately that we are different. There's this side for me that nobody knows because it's all that's going on in my head. But the Japanese actually have, this is like part of how they talk about their existence. And I thought that was really cool. So we can learn a little bit about, you know, just our human interactions in that way, and we can find some healing in it as well. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, I suppose like a nice metaphor is that we can almost look at it like all these hidden mirrors. So if we look at the self in three different mirrors today, kind of what do you see looking back at you? So a nice quote is knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And that, I suppose, is what tonight's about, just reflecting on the self in these three different ways. And I thought, so if you kind of imagine yourself standing in this like mirror-lined room, I just want you to imagine that like every face looking back at you, every version, every angle is this like beautiful mosaic. And no matter what you show to the world, you don't show to the world, it is all good stuff. Like everything that makes you you is beautiful and wonderful. And it's just about looking at those different faces and knowing exactly what we're showing and why. So let's start with the very first face. The very first face is the face for the world. And a nice metaphor for that, I kind of like, it's like the actor on life's stage. So I definitely can relate to that, and I'm sure you can. Like who, and this section is about you and I, delving in a little bit deeper into like, who is that actor on that stage? So imagine yourself, you're like in the center, the grand stage, the lights are bright, the audience is vast, and you've carefully chosen what to wear, the lines that you're going to say. This is our face that we show society. It's kind of like our big public persona, right? And maybe it's not as grand and luxurious, but we choose based on our past. We choose based on experiences around the world. We choose what we show everybody. And we also choose what society tells us we should be looking at that looks, the norm. We try to meet expectations. And actually, sometimes, even though this feels like I call this like my safety blanket, there's this place at which like sometimes it feels heavy. So my personal experience to share with this is that I was always known as the girl that would I do have this side of me, so don't think I don't, but I do have this side of me that would always be smiling and always bouncing around like, oh, that girl, like nothing touches the sides of her. Everything's so happy. But there was like deep trauma that I hadn't shared with anybody for until I like crashed and tumbled and accessed loads of support. And, there was this whole other facet, a whole other face behind that. And I think maybe we can all relate. There's like quiet sides of us, things that maybe we're not ready or never share with the world, which is absolutely fine. But it's knowing that and maybe finding a way, whether it's reading and learning and journaling and talking, that we can kind of work through some of those things so that the conversations in our mind and that face doesn't feel so heavy. But just as much as it feels safe to face the world, that first face, the way that you want, the way that you think people think you should, sometimes it can feel like your heaviest mask, especially when trauma kind of forces us to hide behind our true feelings. And I noticed like maybe there's young people like in their teenage years, like they don't know who they are. So they almost put on all these different masks, right? I don't know about you, but like, you've got like these different sides of you that you're trying to explore, like, who am I? And then kind of as we move forward through, like, we start to figure out who we are and how we really want to present ourselves, but we try on different masks in our lives. But the face that we show the world is that very first face. And in Japanese culture, that they kind of would say like, oh, that's that first face. I think it's kind of interesting. And there is science behind, our first face. It's kind of governed by emotions and social stresses. And it shows how like social stress can sometimes suppress our authentic self. And I know through loads and loads of research, I've trained in yoga and Reiki and NLP and loads of different theories. And it often comes back to like the people that feel a little bit more at peace, people who have been able to like find a little bit of lightness through trauma, are people who are able to kind of slowly come back to being as authentic and being their authentic self. And that's why sometimes the face we show the world does it feel heavy, because it sometimes feels so disconnected from who we actually are. Yeah, kind of interesting. I like kind of reflecting on that. Another little bit of a preface or background on that first face is it's the one, it's sometimes a facade, and we meticulously kind of construct it to align. And I think it's interesting. It's this image or this face we showcase to acquaintances or colleagues or strangers. It kind of embodies what the public image is and the reflection of ourselves that we wish to project to the external world. So it might be the complete opposite. And I definitely can say there's times when I've projected the complete opposite to what I might have been feeling inside. So yeah, it's our personal branding. So yeah, well crafted, something that we can become used to, and it's not a bad thing if it's different. It's just knowing, it's just having that knowledge and reflecting a little bit. So my creative writing task, if you like, I have a small little thing. It's a little writing prompt for you now to start, or you can kind of add to it later. But for your first face of the world, just take a minute or two even to write about your public mask and thinking about like which words images, colors, symbols come to mind, maybe when you think of how you present yourself to the world. How does this mask protect you? But also ask yourself, how does this hinder you? So take a little minute, lots in that. I'll say it again, obviously, just to give you some space. But yes, start with just words and images or symbols that come to mind. So I almost put on, if I were to draw my mask, I have this image of like almost like the Joker smile. Like sometimes I put on this like the biggest smile ever when actually maybe sometimes I should flip it upside down. But maybe it's like that was my image that comes to my head. And there's lots of things to think about in that, asking yourself, well, maybe why is that like that? And how does that fit into, me and my life and my story? And then once you kind of find your way through that, images and symbols, it's just like, how do we present ourselves to the world? Then just asking yourself again, how does it protect you? But how might it hinder you? And you might not have any answers yet, but it's just worth reflection. So I'll give you a little bit of time just to think about that first phase, and just take a little minute to reflect on you. And I think that's the most important part of this theory. I found it really interesting. I did this prompt myself, and I think it's just a nice moment to kind of go, yeah, like there is a different, and there sometimes has to be a different face. Um, but I think we're living in a world now where everyone's trying to get back to that authenticity. And within that, we often find that sense of peace, finally speaking our truth or being exactly who we are. But that first face is exactly, if you're being somebody different, or it's kind of a mix mash, all of it's good stuff. It's just being aware. And actually, sometimes breaking down that face we put onto the world, for me, helped me make sense of my story, my journey, how I got to that point. And I love that question about like, how does it protect me? That was the question that really supported me. What am I doing to protect myself in this persona? I think questions, about how does it hinder, are there, sometimes it could be that, you know, anything you could come up with. But I had done this once in a coaching session with someone in particular who said, well, I'm not sure how it hinders me. And we just discussed a little bit about how sometimes maybe it holds us back from doing things we might want to do, or putting ourselves in positions that we'd like to be in, or maybe for fear of being liked, we don't always say what we mean, even just setting those boundaries. So I don't know if that helps. Yeah, good. Beautiful. Love it. So that's a nice one. And again, if you want to come back to it at any point, you can add to it. And like I said, last session in journaling, mind mapping, bullet pointing, it doesn't have to be this long paragraph. It could just be symbols on a page. That's kind of nice way in. So yeah, we'll just reflect on the second face. And yeah, if you want to pause the video and add to it, go for it. Or if something comes to mind as we work through the three of them, just go back and add it. And we're just going on a little journey, I suppose, of the self. So the second face in Japanese theory, it's called the face for close connection. And it is that face, when we do let a little bit of those walls down, that is the face that we let someone in. So I want you to imagine that, a nice metaphor is this like inner circle of light. And maybe picture this like warm circle of light around you. And in that circle, see if you can kind of place the closest people to you. So whether you've got like somebody like a friend, or it could be a coach, a therapist, who in your circle, you might not show them everything, but you let down face number one and you get a little bit closer, and a little bit more raw and a little bit deeper. And you feel like you can just be a little bit more yourself. This is the second version of ourselves in terms of Japanese theory and their culture. And they say this is the second face, the version of you that feels safer, more vulnerable, and willing to kind of share into our deeper truths. And I think this is a place where like healing can happen, because the power of listening and talking and learning and reflecting and having somebody not like feeling a place where fear of rejection or judgment can kind of dissipate. It helps us to let go of that guard that we put up. And I definitely know in particular, this would be a hard one for those trauma survivors, or people working through a journey of trauma, because sometimes it feels really difficult to share. But it is a place for great breakthrough. And I think that that's really nice to think about. I think that there were things I remember like learning so much about this, the throat chakra, for example. And this is this like aspect, in holistic healing that like we've never really sharing our voice, our true selves. And sometimes you can feel that like tightness in the chest, and the body feels like there might feel like this deep breath if you ever let something out on paper, or you verbally share it. But I genuinely have an experience where like I know there's so many of us that hold on to these like secrets or things that we feel nervous to share because in our head we've built it up so much. But I remember this one moment in my life where I had finally blurted out in a very, a space that was totally disconnected to my actual life, but it felt really safe. I felt like in this inner circle of light, I blurted out my experience. And I wanted to just say that that moment of sharing in that deeper truth is probably the first day that I began to heal. And it doesn't have to be, you say it could even just be, writing it on a piece of paper and getting used to talking things out, because a problem shared is genuinely a problem halved and often a problem solved. It allows you to then make some sense of it. And I remember thinking, okay, I've built this up in my head. And someone's reaction to it was so much more like, hey, like that's actually not that uncommon. And like these are ways that you can work through it. And I remember thinking, like, I've held on to that for like 36 years, So it's very interesting and very powerful when we can kind of get to this place where we have that second face, the face for close connections. It doesn't always have to be the deepest level of you. That is probably more your third face. But if you can get to a place in this with close connections, the Japanese suggest that this is just a really beautiful place in our human experience where you can work in that connected place with others. And from a physical science based experience, we release in our mind and our body so many of the positive chemicals that we need to kind of feel a sensation of confidence and resilience when we share with someone, or we let go of some information, even if we wrote it out and put it in a box or ask somebody to read it. But when you feel this connection, you will release oxytocin and you'll begin to strengthen, like, there's this amazing piece. I think that I shared it in module 3, but her name's Kelly McGonigal, and she does this incredible TED Talk. I think I reference it in there anyways. You can watch it before that as well if you wanted, but she does this piece called Make Stress Your Friend. And that's what the TED Talk is about, if you're ever just looking for an easy watch. But I think I must have watched that video 25 times, because the message in that really proves the impact we have as human beings to connect with other people. and that it strengthens the heart. And I mean, have a watch, but she is so incredible at articulating like why we need other people. And why the second face is a face that must feel possibly scary for those of us who've gone on a journey to healing from something. It feels particularly vulnerable, but it is a great place for breakthroughs. Yeah. So yeah, just getting into that second kind of face. We reveal it to close friends and families, just to kind of recap. As we move beyond this superficial realm of phase one, we encounter the second phase, and this one is the one reserved for those closest to us, those people we would put in that inner circle of light. It doesn't have to be many, and it doesn't have to be family or a friend. It could just be, anybody, that a therapist, a counselor, a coach, anyone that you feel like you're beginning to just let go a little bit. The face represents the more intimate aspects of our persona and our vulnerabilities, fears, and joys also that we share. And we share that with those people we hold dear, don't we? And within the confines of a trusted relationship, super important, we can start to shed a little bit of the armor of that first face and reveal our true selves. It's nurturing that second face requires a lot. It's fostering meaningful connections and cultivating some open lines of communication. It involves kind of just investing some time and effort into building relationships where there's lots of empathy and trust and mutual understanding. But through this space, you can kind of experience a real genuine connection, and you can find it like a bit of peace and solace in times ahead. And it reminds you that you are not alone. I like that one. I like the second face. But I remember there's, I used to feel a little bit like a loner in many ways. Like there weren't many people in that circle, but I think that's the point. It's okay. But it is just allowing yourself to let that armor down from time to time. So yes, my creative writing prompt or a little journaling task just to kind of reflect on your own experience here. I'll invite you to do it like now quickly, or you can write the questions down or come back to the video. But it says, who are the people in your inner circle of light? You do that like circle, who would those people be? And I can reflect personally. You might have people that you think, oh, kind of, but they could go in your inner circle. I have a friend that sometimes it's a really healthy friendship. Sometimes it can be like a little bit toxic, but there are layers of me that I do let down compared to that personified layer one. So don't overthink it, but it is just nice to reflect on, who do you let in? And then the next one is really nice. In this one is to either write about a time, mind map, bullet point, anything at all. Is there a time where you felt truly seen and accepted by someone? And if there's not, it's not about going, oh, that's not happened. It's about thinking maybe next time you feel that, maybe write it down. So thinking about when you feel seen and accepted. How does that feel? If there was one person, whether it was in your youth, it was a teacher, it's now, it's by a friend. If there was somebody in your life, maybe just reflect on how that makes you feel. And my last sort of question is, how could you expand your circle of light? Or do you want to? Because you don't have to. It doesn't have to be this fast. But is there somewhere else, or is there someone that you think, I do think that that would be a great connection? And there's a magic in that human connection. So yeah, it's sometimes nice. I genuinely like draw a big circle and write names in it and stick man. I'm not always the most traditional journaling person. You'd see scribbles all over a page. Remember, it's your inner workings in your head. It doesn't have to be a traditional long written journal. But it's just reflecting, who gets to see that second face. which I think is a nice one to think about and reflect on. Yeah. Mhm. I'll give you a minute just to play with that a little bit. I also think there's a point in writing them down because there are moments sometimes when our brain might ruminate or we might feel a sense of loneliness or maybe coming back to that inner circle of light or coming back to that person or people that have made you feel that way even in the past is a reminder maybe to pick up the phone or just even if you've not seen people in ages, but you know there wasn't a fallout, just reach out and have a dinner, reach out and have a phone call because sometimes it's those connections that will give you that boost that you needed. I personally had a dinner on Monday with a friend that we kind of drifted apart, but I knew there was no hostility, but she definitely someone who'd fill my cup, and I hadn't seen her in about 2.5 years. And when we met, I'm not gonna lie, like we burst into tears. I genuinely didn't expect it, but it's because we had in the past connected on such a deep level that it was this moment of like, oh, I feel really safe and at home with you, and I cannot wait to sit down and share a meal and chat. And we met for an hour and a half over a dinner on a random Monday night. It was all we could fit in. But I tell you what, that feeling has stuck with me all week. And I also felt like it was almost like a sense of like healing. I could just let that mask down. So those people matter. And I remember when I wrote my inner circle of light, for example, those people that were my people, some of them I genuinely can say to I haven't talked to in years. But that's a little reminder to just check in, and because those are your people. Those people will bring us back to that space we need to be to kind of feel a little bit more at peace, and they support our healing just like we support theirs. All right, my little third face is the true self. The true self. I mean, I could be here all day talking about the true self, but we'll just kind of talk about it in the idea of this Japanese ideology. They would say that the third face might be phrased like the one that's concealed from all. There's a sense of there's like hidden beneath the layers of the first and second faces lies this like enigmatic third face, an aspect of ourselves that maybe we never revealed to anyone. We might think we do, or maybe we don't. Maybe there's these inner workings of thoughts and feelings. Maybe these are the things we're working on as we go on this journey. I love the program Bond offers because I'm not plugging it, but it does allow us to like access almost like a buffet, all of these different like healing modalities and make it suit us. And it's our own personal inner workings, but it allows us to work on questions like who is my true self beneath the worry and the trauma, and how can I get back to that authentic place. Yeah, this face represents those innermost thoughts, the desires, those secrets, the goals, the things that excite you that maybe you haven't shown anybody or you haven't tapped into since you were a small kid. It's a realm kind of reserved solely for our own contemplation. It's an introspective space where we kind of grapple with our deepest emotions. Like I said, our aspirations, it's not always a place of like sadness. And even it's where we kind of feel those fears, whether we voice them or not. And while that third face remains quite concealed, its influence is often like permeates our actions and our decisions. And it's the source of everything, even our good stuff, our intuition, that feeling that guides you on that subconscious level. And honoring this face involves embracing, solitude, engaging in things that you're doing tonight and in the program of self-reflection. And it really does take allowing yourself to kind of delve into those innermost complexities of our story and our journey and where we're headed. And I think I've come across a really lovely metaphor for this, and it kind of describes like it's like this secret garden or this hidden garden within. And deep within us lies this like little hidden piece, this little bit of overgrown area and maybe the paths are a bit forgotten and the gates are a bit locked. This is your truest self. And the face no one sees, not even you, when life's noise drowns out even your inner voice. And this is pretty cool when we talk a little bit about science. Sometimes our brain will form these neural pathways in the mind that maybe supports like negative thinking, or we ruminate in certain ways, but we can change some of those thinking to get back with neuroplasticity, and we can rewire our thinking. And things that bring us back to our true self are all of, you know what, the reason I'm bringing this up is because every time I come back to, I want to say, like, any sort of healing ideology, it comes back to this, like, everyone's just seeking, like, who am I after all of the experiences I've had? Who am I after trauma, after heartbreak, after this experience? Who am I now, and where am I going? And that's why mindfulness, that's why journaling, that's why meditation and yoga and running and movement, it all helps us create these pathways of self-awareness and self-compassion. It helps us listen to what our brain and our body and our mind need. And I think that that's why when they say that we find that third self in solitude, I do think that sitting in the quiet and just doing it for the sake of listening is really interesting. And I've done it's a previous talk. I'll have to maybe do that session again, because I think meditation has some negative connotations, but just sitting with the self, and just, if you find the mind wandering, a really great tip is this: if you just were sat there and your brain's wandering all over, I often just in my head kind of think, inhaling, going up, 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 going down, 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 and I just name what I'm doing: in, out, out, out. And then after I've found some breath, I come back to that if my brain's wandering. But otherwise, I just sit and listen. And there's nothing to listen to. The meditation, I used to think it was wrong if I just had all these thoughts in my head. But I want you to just watch the thoughts a little bit as like the fly on the wall. Actually, the fact that my mind is busy shows that maybe being in the quiet will help me make sense of it. And if these are the things that are coming up in my head, maybe I should write it down and talk about it in my next kind of coaching session. And sometimes I listen and I'm like, is that really bothering me? Where is that? And I take a few deep breaths and see if I can kind of work through it. And then if I do it again and the same things are coming up, maybe it's just me and my intuition telling me it's time to work through that. And I think that that's where we kind of can work on that self-reflection. So yeah, I found a quote. Okay, it said, and the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was actually more painful than the risk it took to blossom. And I really liked that one. It is really powerful to work through into your second mask, and actually really brave and incredible and vulnerable to work on your third mask. And everybody in this program, anybody who signs up to something this, you are working on your third mask. So no matter what is coming up for you, if it's feeling challenging or difficult, you need to sit in a chair knowing that you are being brave and you're working hard, and you are getting closer and closer to that space where you can continue to heal. And maybe that garden that we talked about, that's kind of overgrown and the paths are forgotten and the gates might be locked. Maybe this kind of program is helping you to just do a little bit of weeding, tidy all of that up, and just open that gate even for yourself to like a nice, healthier like pathway, and even like neurological pathways in terms of science, just creating that sense of self and letting go. So yes, that brings me to this last little bit about my creative writing prompt for your third face tonight. Again, you can do it now or you can leave it. You can scribble a picture. I absolutely can't draw worth anything, but I do scribble and it kind of just gets it on paper. So I would kind of imagine if you could close your eyes for a second and just imagine like your hidden garden, or if you can't find a metaphor in it, just think of like a little overgrown garden in your head. And then think a little bit about some of the things in your life that maybe feel overgrown. Maybe there are things that have like sat that maybe you feel like you could have dealt with or you're starting to deal with. What are some of those things that might be neglected? What part of your garden needs a little bit clearing? And maybe what part of your garden is really vibrant? Because there's both sides of it. What have you nurtured and what have you neglected? And that's kind of a big question, isn't it? What have you nurtured? What have you neglected? What are you working on right now? What are you nurturing now? What are you starting to cull and clear and tidy and tackle? And we all know that that garden, it will eventually, grow brighter and stronger and blossom. And I think this is a nice writing prompt as well, is think about what it might take to tend to this garden. What might it take within you to tend to this garden? And what treasures or truth do you think lie hidden there? And sometimes thinking about those things, sometimes the truth is that, you are enough, that you are worth it, no matter what our story or our trauma has told us, that you have everything in you to be resilient. That you have something to teach the world. Maybe those little hidden treasures are value that sometimes you forget that we have. So don't be afraid to write really ultra positive things in there. What treasures or truths might be hidden in there? And that's not fears or scary things. That's things, the good stuff that we forget to tell ourselves sometimes, in there, reminding yourself like you are a good person. Even though sometimes we've neglected bits that can make us really truly feel that. And in terms of just kind of pulling it all together, keep writing or doodling or journaling or press pause. But I don't want to keep you all night. But I wanted to say that in terms of Japanese theory, they believe we need all three. Not one is better than the other. It's okay if we rest in safety in one and we find space and vulnerability in another. The three faces of the self create a harmonious balance. And achieving harmony among these three faces of the self is actually like quite a delicate endeavor. And they suggest that to truly understand and embrace ourselves, feel our best like space of confidence and resilience, we must kind of just acknowledge, and I love the knowledge in this, that each of these faces exists. And that's what tonight was about, just like that journey of self-awareness, and honor the unique roles in shaping our identity that each of these masks or these faces brings to us. There are these three sides. You can imagine yourself looking in three different mirrors, three very different journaling tasks. You've got your white light and your garden, and balancing these faces is genuinely forever an ongoing journey, and one that requires self-awareness, introspection, and a commitment. So yeah, overall, they're not separate. They're truly interconnected, like three little rivers flowing into kind of one ocean. And healing from trauma, actually, we can, if we can kind of harmonize some of these faces, celebrate, them, we could also learn about why, we are the way we are, and start to work through that identity and, be a friend to ourselves. So yeah, just a few little tips is recognize sometimes when your public face feels like a bit heavy. maybe that's an opportunity to kind of look at your second face and see if there's a place of vulnerability where you can work through that. Maybe there's somebody you can speak to. Maybe that second face is the face that you need to fill your cup if that first face is not feeling, nice. And embracing your hidden self with compassion and courage is really powerful. So yeah, I think it's great. And if you were to kind of imagine that, like if I held a mirror, if I was in a group session and I could see you all, I would hold this mirror up and ask you to look at yourself and imagine looking at yourself in like three different ways, those three different masks, three different faces, and remind yourself that they all form this like beautiful picture of who you are. And whatever journey you're on, it doesn't matter which face you're showing. It's just about asking yourself some questions, how have these experiences made me who I am? And, reminding ourselves that human connection is something that we need. So yeah. If you ever wanted to kind of do one last task, you can maybe save this one for later. But this one's kind of you could do like a 3-part diagram of your faces, which is kind of a fun one. Just draw like a little face and however you want to do it. I kind of just separated it almost like a flag. And then you could just draw your 3 faces, or symbols or images or colors. I've done this in a workshop where I bought a mask from like the works, and we just colored in our 3 faces, which was really cool to see like what people came up with and the colors. And it is kind of cathartic to kind of be like, wow, like look at that. Your public face, your face for your loved ones, and your hidden self. And just in it, a nice reflection to look at that and see like, how does that all interact? And what maybe is there a step that you could take to like bring them into greater harmony? And when I mean bring them into greater harmony, that just means like making you feel like you can be your best self, I suppose. Putting that like, if there was something that you wanted to be in your authentic space, how can they maybe work between the 3 of them? So yeah. It's not about disregarding any of the faces. It's just understanding, integrating them. And yeah, nurture those relationships. So I love Rumi as a quote master. I love a good motivational quote to end. So it just says, the wound is the place where the light enters you. A really nice one. So, it allows you that space to grow. So don't be afraid to kind of work a little deeper, and be proud that you're doing it. Your 3 faces are never a limitation. They are your pathways to your continued healing and growth. Ah. There you go. Always lots to think about on our Well-Being Wednesdays. But I felt really, really taken by this Japanese concept and the power of our 3 masks, and thought it was a nice just time to reflect. Yeah, awesome. If you had any questions, let me know. But otherwise, I'll let you have a beautiful evening. And yeah, I'm back each month. So we'll see you soon. Oh, good. Beautiful. All right. Amazing. All good. Perfect. I think that's it. We're all good. Amazing. Have a lovely evening. Thank you for joining me, Christina. I appreciate it. It's always nice to have someone to talk to. I hope that was helpful in some way. So have a lovely evening, and yeah, we'll see you soon.
I was writing lots of notes. That's why I was looking down.
Oh no, I could tell. I was like, oh, I love that. It makes me feel like, yeah, that there's something that's kind of resonating. So that's cool. Thank you. Thank you so much. Right, have a lovely evening. Stay warm. It's cold, isn't it? I'm actually, a little disclaimer, I'm like sat with my blanket all wrapped up in my cup of tea that's gone cold. But yeah, have a lovely evening and we'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Right.
you.
Bye.